Hello guys and welcome back to Ninjago News TV. As kind of like a part 2 to my ranking the season finales video, today is a ranking the season premieres video. Every season starts off with the season premiere, and some are much better than others. But typically most of them introduce the villain and that is their first debut episode, and they generally tend to start the action with some fight scenes and stuff. Usually they're not the most exciting episodes of the seasons. Typically for me, they're usually the worst episodes of the entire season, but that doesn't mean when we're looking at them like this, that doesn't mean they're bad. They're just nowhere near as good as any of the other ones. So without further ado, let's get started. This episode is just plain bad. It's Darkness Shall Rise in season 2, and it really doesn't start any action, and it doesn't represent the season well at all, okay? It's the first of what's considered the filler episodes, which I actually do enjoy, but this one is just a really bad episode. Basically, it's a ninja, they have to pay rent for their new hotel, and they do this by doing jobs, and you can see Jay in this picture is delivering pizza. The only somewhat interesting aspect of this episode was the Serpentine Generals that were actually, they were trying to kidnap Lloyd and they robbed the bank. That's kind of like a standard criminal thing, and I found that to be somewhat interesting. The other interesting thing was Garmadon forging the mega weapon, but other than that, there's really nothing good about this episode. Black Bounty was also kind of cool. That was in this episode too. But the ninja did basically nothing in this episode, except for that one train fight scene. But it's just a very boring episode with very little action. This episode is also just okay. The episode is called Infamous, and it is the season premiere of season 6. It introduces Nadakon. This is his debut episode. But other than that, there's nothing going on to it, really. It does have some cool scenes between Nadakon and Klaus, which is the only good thing really about this episode. The rest of it is just the ninja in the city of Styx and the police, who I find to be like kind of lame antagonists. They're not really antagonists, but in this season, for the first half, they are against the ninja, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, it's just really boring because the action kind of starts, but it doesn't feel complete, if you get what I'm saying. Like, there is definitely action. It just doesn't feel like any of it is really completed at all. Nadakon is revealed, and his scene with Klaus is probably the only interesting thing about this episode. The Mask of Deception is the season premiere of season 8, and this episode is just plain boring. There's very little action except for the amazing fight scene at the beginning of the episode, which is really the best part about this. That fight scene between Mr. E and Lloyd was really fun to watch. Now, other than that, it's just boring, and it feels like this episode, episode 76, really, if they tried, could have been put into one episode. Instead, they chose to make it 2, and therefore, both of these episodes were pretty mediocre. This one being worse than the other one, actually. Now, basically, it just shows the ninja getting back together, which is cool, but remember, we've seen this before in Ninjago, cough cough, season 4. And it's not anything new, okay? So, the rest of it also introduces Harumi, and this episode does a good job of introducing the next episode, but other than that, it doesn't do anything better. The Surge is the season premiere of season 3, and it's actually a good episode, and takes a huge leap up from the other season premieres I've reviewed already. Basically, this is the first episode we saw in Ninjago for a couple years, I think, after season 2 ended, and it really didn't fail to disappoint. Yes, I think it tried to accomplish too much action in one episode, but the Overlord being revealed right after the last episode where he was thought to be dead, I think that was a little too soon of a reveal. It would have made better sense for Reboot It if they had kept the Overlord as a secret kind of villain, and he got revealed in, like, halfway through the season. I think that just would have worked out better for the season as a whole. But this was actually really cool in introducing the new technologically advanced Ninjago City and how it had changed very much since season 2 and season 1. It was pretty cool to see, especially the ninja visiting Borg, getting their technoblades, and that was actually pretty cool. It was a good episode. In 4th place is The Hands of Time, season premiere of season 7. This was actually a really good episode because the action done in this episode they didn't try to cram too much in this episode, and the reason for this action was kind of explained because, of course, Achronix is supposed to come back after 40 years, and that fight between him and Master Wu was an amazing fight. Super fun to watch. Only complaint is that the ninja didn't do anything until the latter half of the episode, but that's okay because the fight with Achronix and Master Wu totally made up for it. This episode didn't bite off more than it could chew. It had the perfect amount of action, and it started the season very nicely. At the end, we see a really cool clip of Achronix meeting Crux, and that just does nothing but foreshadow the entire season and make the viewers interested and hooked. Overall, it's a really exciting and fun, action-packed episode that doesn't bite off more than it could chew. Winds of Change was also another really exciting episode. It revealed who actually the Ghost General from episode 44 was, and it was none other than Moro, or Sensei Wu's first student. Another cool thing was it introduced that dynamic between Lloyd and Moro, as Lloyd did visit and he battled Moro at the Museum of History in a brief but nevertheless fun to watch battle. Now, Moro did win and he was able to possess Lloyd, and then his next target was actually the tea farm, where he did battle the ninja and they got defeated really quickly. But nevertheless, that was still a great fight scene, even though it was sad to see the ninja get beaten up. And then he does steal Master Wu's staff, but the end of the episode is nothing more than a cliffhanger, where the bounty is flying off and Moro follows them on his dragon. Overall, a great episode. Rise of the Snakes is the first episode of Ninjago, excluding all the pilots and stuff. As being the first episode of Ninjago, it probably had a lot of expectations, and for me, it definitely didn't fail to deliver. I don't know what makes this episode different, because in some ways, it's a lot like the episodes that I put at the very bottom, but there is something that makes a very key difference. This episode had a ton going on into it. First, you had the ninja racing to Jamanakai village on their dragons, then they discovered the Green Ninja prophecy, then they had that cool kendo battle, and then finally that final battle with the Serpentine. It had so much in it, yet it did it in quite an effective way, where this episode really didn't feel rushed at all, and it was just enjoyable to watch totally. It also introduced Lloyd Garmadon, who is the bratty nephew of Sensei Wu, and he's never going to be a villain, of course. That's what we get at here. He has some character development. And then we also get introduced to the character of Scales, who we also see some character development in this episode, that we get to see more of him in the next episode. Overall, this episode showed the Serpentine's power, and it introduced them very well. It's a great episode, and it's definitely one of those that I love to rewatch. The Invitation is the season premiere of Season 4, and this is actually the first episode after Zane's death, so there was a lot expected from it, and it was an amazing episode. I liked this for the same reasons that I liked The Rise of the Snakes, except there was more to it that actually made this definitely more realistic. Now, once again, this episode crammed a lot into it, but did it in an effective way. First, you have Lloyd, who's trying to recruit the ninja, then their scene and battle at Chen's restaurant, and then, of course, you have them going off on the ferry, and Kai's cool battle with Karloff, which was brief, but still fun to watch, nevertheless. Now, the thing I liked more about this episode, and it only takes the number one ranking a little more than Rise of the Snakes. It's a close call for me. But this is definitely more realistic, and it doesn't start so much action yet. It doesn't start that much action. So it's a fun episode, but realistic at the same time. Because we don't see the battle starting yet. The real battles, not Kai versus Karloff. Of course, that would definitely make this episode very, very rushed. And I like that Chen is kind of foreshadowed, but he's not totally introduced yet. And I like that because that's definitely more realistic. Overall, this episode is my favorite because it's realistic, but at the same time, it's still a very fun episode to watch. So that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone and everyone you know. The finale, the Memorial Day special, is coming later today. Top 5 most honorable Ninjago characters. And by the way, happy Memorial Day to everyone out there, all the Americans out there who are listening. Take some time to remember fallen American soldiers who have done so much for our country today. And anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.